Mr. Bernard King, thank you so much for coming on to the Knickish show. My name is Mo. This is Osama. And for all the listeners with us, we have four-time All-Star, two-time All-NBA, and Hall of Famer Bernard King, and arguably the greatest Knicks scorer of all time. So it's such a pleasure to have you on the show.
Well, thank you.
We're
Glad
so
to be
honored.
here. Pleasure meeting the two of you.
So, like you mentioned right before we were talking, or right before we started recording, you're as you said, you're just a kid from Brooklyn. So, have you visited Brooklyn recently? At least last few months or so?
Well, Brooklyn is always going to be home. I reside in Atlanta, Georgia, but I do get back to New York quite often. I've seen the changes over the last number of years in Brooklyn, specifically downtown Brooklyn, where I grew up at. Long Island University is not too far from the Barclays Center, so I'm glad to see that it's there, and Brooklyn is really thriving.
Yeah, we actually, all three of us went to school near there. I went to what's known now as NYU Tandon, which is Polytechnic University.
Sure.
So right there, and these guys went to.
So yeah, myself and Teddy actually went to high school at Brooklyn Tech.
Oh,
so right by Fort Greene.
that was one of my choices when I came out of junior high school, was Brooklyn Tech.
Oh, awesome.
But I wanted to get out of the area and experience someplace else that was different, that would help my development.
Got it.
But Brooklyn Tech was an excellent school, and I have an honorary doctorate from LIU, which is not too far from there.
Not at
Very
all.
nice,
Actually,
Dr.
used to-
King.
Actually wore the cap and gown, marched across the stage.
That's
Awesome.
amazing.
That's actually where we used to hop on the train every single day after school. So that's
Is that
awesome.
right?
Yeah. So speaking of Fort Greene and speaking of that area, like I mentioned, we went to school there for 4 years, and we saw it change a little bit over the years. In your years, both playing and just outside of your playing career, how have you seen Brooklyn or New York City itself evolve over those years?
Well, it's far more diversified now than the period of time that I grew up in Brooklyn. I attended Fort Hamilton High School in 1974. I was bused out to Fort Hamilton High School because it was the era of integration. And so Brooklyn as a whole has become more diverse, which I think affords everyone who resides here a more positive cultural experience to interact with different individuals from different cultures. And you've seen that throughout New York during that period of time, and it just continues to grow. Everyone all over the world knows about Brooklyn.
Yeah. So yeah, we've seen like a lot of change, like as you mentioned, over the past few years, especially culturally, both Brooklyn, Queens, all around the city, all together. But speaking of changing and diversity and stuff, I want to bring it back a little bit to your playing career. One of the most astounding things in your career was your ability to change your game as the years went past, and as you've dealt with certain issues with your injuries and such. You were able to change your career from such a great turnaround jump shooter to someone who's able to be a better shooter, more athletic, slashing to the rim. One of the questions I had was, for players who are like you in today's NBA, what can they learn from you in terms of changing their game to adapt to today's NBA or adapt to any personal issues that they've experienced?
Well, I was always a student of the game, so I was a very analytical player. I didn't perceive myself to be a creative player, so I thought the game. And I won't get too technical on you, but in terms of the ability to adjust and adapt to different offensive systems, that's what you have to have the ability to do if you really want to excel within the NBA. So I was an all-pro in a set offense, I was an all-pro in the passing game, and I was an all-pro in the transition game. And I think that adaptability allowed me to play at a very elite level. But I had a different approach to the game that you won't hear from any other player you ever talk to on this planet Earth. On the left-hand side of the floor, there's only 5 ways you can be defended by a single defender. They can force you right. Some guys have a weak right hand. They can force you left. Some guys have a weak left hand. They can give you the jump shot because your jump shot is weak. When they play you tight, you don't know how to break down the defense. They can overplay you because you don't know how to get open. Those are the 5 different ways you can be defended from the left wing or the right wing. So I, as a scorer, all I had to do was develop 5 counter moves to the 5 different ways you will defend me. Now, on the left-hand side of the floor, I had 9 spots I would shoot from. As I said, I won't get too technical. If you buy my book, you'll read it in the back of the book.
Oh,
on the right-hand side of the floor, I had 9 spots.
What do you
You
know?
have game face.
What do you know?
We do our
You have my
homework here.
memoir. So 9 spots on the left, 9 spots on the right, and 4 spots from the front of the rim to the top of the key. If you can count how many spots does that constitute? 9, 9, and 4.
22.
22 spots. So I had 22 spots within the half-court system of where I'm going to take my shot. And again, you can only be defended 5 different ways. And so I'm going to take my shot at one of those 9 spots on the left-hand side of the floor. If I'm on the left, or if I'm on the right, is replicated, and that's where I'm going to take my shot. So when I looked at the floor, you see the foul line, you see the baseline, you see the sideline, and you see half court. What I see is a grid.
Wow. So someone who's very amateur to playing the sport of basketball and watching it all their lives, we never realize how technically and how detailed people look at the game.
You will never hear this from anyone else on this planet.
exactly.
What I
This
just
is-
explained to you.
Yeah.
This
I mean,
is surreal. Bernardi's taking us to school.
So
This is crazy.
by doing that, it allowed me to play at a very consistent level. I never played up nor down. And then the big games, I would raise my game to another level. And that's why, in the course of my career, I shot over 52% field goal percentage for my entire career.
I gotta ask it. So, at least in the last 10 to 15 years, a lot of people recognize the flu game as Dirk Nowitzki's game against the Miami Heat. Prior to that was Jordan's flu game in the 90s. But there is the one flu game that you had, Mr. King, against the Detroit Pistons in a very pivotal game in the playoffs. Would you like to tell us about what goes through your mind when Isaiah Thomas is scoring all those points in the last minute, the fourth
Well,
quarter?
thank you for acknowledging that, but however, I have to take you back just a little bit. During that series against Detroit Pistons that you mentioned, they were favored to win the series in the playoffs.
Right.
I was playing with 2 dislocated fingers,
Yeah. Super.
the fingers taped together, and a cast on the middle finger of each hand. That was very painful. It was very difficult. If it was not the playoffs, I would not have been playing. So consequently, I had to raise my intensity level to a higher level to withstand the pain that I felt. And then the 5th game that you spoke of, I had the flu during that game, and I didn't intend to shoot around that morning.
Yeah.
Stayed in my room as the team went over for shoot around practice. But I felt I couldn't let my teammates down. And I always say this, my heart's from Brooklyn, so I'm not going to sit this out. And I averaged 42 points a game for 5 straight games in the playoffs against the Pistons, which was an NBA record, and we beat them in overtime. However, he spoke of Isaiah Thomas. In that game, he was just phenomenal.
Yeah.
I can't imagine how you score 16 points in 90 seconds. If you went out to the playgrounds, either of you, including myself, there's no way we would score 16 points against defense in 90 seconds.
Yeah.
It's not going to happen. So that was amazing what he did during that series.
So when he's scoring all those points, it must feel a little demoralizing.
No.
So
No,
what's going through your head
It
in the
just
process?
means that I have to come back and match it.
Right.
I'm the leader of my team. I know I'm going to get the ball. I have to come back and match it. That's simple. There's no pressure in that. It's not demoralizing. If you ever get demoralized, then you're not going to
And you
perform
lose.
well.
Right.
And that's really
You've already given in.
Yeah.
You've given them the advantage. I tell you what, there was one play in that game in overtime. We're in the huddle.
Mm-hmm.
And Hubie Brown, remember, I'm averaging 42 points, right? And this won't be long, don't worry, I saw you look at your watch.
I just want to make sure I'm not taking too much time. We're very limited, so
No,
not
just
nothing
trying
like
to-
that. We want to keep it as long as we can.
No, at any rate, we're in the huddle, and Hubie Brown is executing a play for someone else. Did I say I was averaging 42 points a game?
Yeah.
Yes.
The game's on the line?
Wait,
Now,
how
why
many
would
points
you
did you-
execute a play for someone else other than me? Now, as a young player, you're taught you don't question the coach. And I had that same attitude as a professional. You never question the coach. Whatever the coach decides to do is what you implement as a player. But in that situation, with the season on the line, the game on the line, I was not in agreement with what he was doing.
Yeah.
And so, for the first time in my professional life, I said, do I have the right to take the ball myself in that hole? He didn't respond, and I said it louder. Hubie, do I have the right to take the ball myself? And finally he looked up and he said, yeah. And I'm telling him, I'm breaking your play. So the ball's inbounded by Billy. Play was for Billy Cartwright. The ball's inbounded, and I waved Billy Cartwright out. I received the ball, and never forget it to this day. I see it right now. You, Earl Curitan, you're guarding me. And Earl Curitan of the Pistons said, come on and bring it. Can you imagine?
Wow.
In that pressure-filled situation, he
Yeah.
said, "Come on and bring it." I dribbled twice to my right, put the ball between my legs on the left just to throw him off, and drove left, 2 dribbles, never more than 2 dribbles when I took a shot, and faded, net, we win.
Wow.
Amazing.
I mean, that kind of mentality, that kind of grit and strength, like, is it something that you feel has grown with your game, or have you just always had this growing up?
Once I developed my skills as a young player, I always had that. What I always really had was an intensity, the will to win. I didn't like losing. And so I always had that, and then my talent caught up with my intensity. And in high school, I played in All-American tournaments. I was not an All-American in high school, but we played in 5 All-Star games against the All-Americans, New York City All-Stars against the All-Americans. And in each tournament, I won MVP. That's when I knew I was good. And then I go on to the University of Tennessee, and at 17 years old, my first game, I scored 42.
Wow, that's amazing. I can't even score 42 in my dreams.
But I built my game in many different ways. I played a great deal in the low post and the low block. I was a great wing player and a great open floor transition player. But in the low post, you're going up against bigger guys. Some guys are 6'10", 6'9", even 7'7" in the case of Manute Bol. And so what I used to do as a young player and continuing to my professional career, I would practice shooting with my eyes closed. If you can make baskets with your eyes closed, and you're going up against a 6'10" Kevin McHale of the Boston Celtics where you don't see the rim, it doesn't matter. You know where it's at, because you practice with your eyes closed.
Wow.
It's just I could sit here for hours and just listen to you talk. I've watched all your interviews with different people, and I always learn something new from you.
It's just
So,
different in person. Like, you get to meet the person, feel the charisma. It's not just like we see why now you've been so successful over those years.
Well, I used to practice falling down. When I would practice shooting the ball, releasing it, and falling to the floor.
Wow.
Because in the game, you're going to get knocked off balance.
Mhm.
You're going to fall down, right? So if you practice that, so when you're being hit and you're falling, you still make the shot.
Wow.
I left nothing to chance.
and I'm sure many of today's NBA players have learned so much from you. So I see Jen's head popping in and out, so I just want to make sure I'm not taking too much of your time. So we do have some rapid fire questions that we'd like to ask you outside of the NBA. So you can start us off.
So, Mr. King, just want to ask you a couple questions here, very unrelated to basketball, but still fun nonetheless. And I'd like you to try to answer within 3 seconds, and maybe we can get this one. Maybe this is something you might fail. Who knows? So, first question. In 3 words, how would you describe your hot girl summer?
Hot girl summer? I've been married 22 years, so I don't have a hot girl summer.
Well, just to clarify for everybody, hot girl summer is like, it started from a song, but it's just more
No,
about
I know
fun
it's a
together.
song. I'm familiar with the song, but I've been married again 22 years, so I don't have a hot girl song.
Okay, that's a loyal man right there. Award winning.
So let's say you're walking into Game 7 of an NBA Finals game. What music are you listening to really pump yourself up?
Dizzy Gillespie, the great jazz man.
Wow.
Trumpeter, if you're not familiar with him. And he was a friend of mine, and when I came back from my injury after 2 years of being out of the game, but rehabbing to come back from an injury no player had ever come back from.
Right.
Rehab 6 days a week, 6 days a week for 2 straight years. And my game that I returned against the Milwaukee Bucks after 2 years, I'm riding to the arena, and the night before I called Dizzy Gillespie and I said, hey, you probably heard him coming back. I'd like you there. So Dizzy Gillespie.
Wow, great answer. Cool. Next question. If you were in the Avengers, what would your
The
superpower
Avengers?
be?
The
Yes, the
Avengers.
Avengers. Marvel fan?
Not necessarily.
Okay, that's totally fine. But what would your superpower be?
My superpower. I couldn't tell you that. I couldn't tell you that.
Okay, that's totally fine.
And last question that we have for you. We are our company name or brand name is Knick-ish. So what
Nikesh,
is
why Knickish?
that's exactly that's kind of what our question is to you. So what does Knick-ish mean to you?
Once a Knick, always a Knick.
Yes.
I came up with that slogan.
I love it.
Once a Knick, always a Knick.
Yes.
I used to tag all the emails that I sent out to the Knicks. Once a Knick, always a Knick.
Oh wow.
I
Did
did
not
not know
know.
you.
Yes.
You're the originator of that.
Yes, I am.
And yet everybody on social media, everybody's always saying that. So.
I keep all my emails. I got 90,000 of them, so I can pull that up if you like.
All right, so Mr. Bernard King, thank you so much. It's such an honor to be,
Well, thank you.
having
Appreciate it.
you
Enjoyed
on our
talking to
show,
you guys.
having you with us.
Appreciate it.
Thank
We've
you.
learned so much from you in just 10, 15 minutes.
Well,
And I know our listeners and followers are going to have an amazing time listening to this episode.
Well, look out for my motion picture. I signed a motion picture deal a month ago.
We're looking forward to it.
A drop.